Did you know that according to the United Nations World Food Program, there are about 842 million people that don't have enough to eat? So today, I'm going to tell you about Norman Borlaug and what he did to fight the war on hunger. He achieved great things, including winning a Nobel Peace Prize in 1970. He began working for the National Forest Service before he ever even graduated college. And then he married his wife Margaret, and they moved to Minneapolis to settle down. But he continued to study the crossbreeding of wheat and other grains so that he could produce a strand that was resistant to the fungus known as rust. Rust is a pest that devastated plants worldwide. Borlaug achieved his doctorate in plant pathology and genetics in 1942. While this was happening, he tried to enlist into the Army for World War II, but the military said that his work at Dew Point was essential for the war efforts. At Dew Point, he created a camouflage, and one of his greatest achievements was a waterproof adhesive that was used for sealing seaborne shipments so that supply packages. While he was doing this, Mexico was fighting a battle of their own against famine, and they were having to import crops just to feed their people. So Borlaug decided he was going to help. He went to Mexico, and his first attempt to help was a failure because of a lack of personnel and the resistance of the people and the bureaucrats. But he was persistent, and his studies grew in sophistication as he continued. But he wanted to create a crop that would sustain life and be rust resistant in the Mexican soil. So he moved his family to Mexico, and he created a long-term commitment to the Mexican agriculture. He was active in his local community while coaching the first Little League team. His studies grew, and they got more sophisticated as he realized that the thin stalks of his wheat could not sustain the weight of the grain that it was producing, so it would often snap. In 1950, though, he came across a dwarf plant from Japan that was stronger. He then crossed it with his breeds and created a semi-dwarf stalk that was stronger and could support the weight of the wheat. He then crossed that with a rust-resistant breed that could sustain life in the Mexican soil, and it became really popular and fed lots of people. While this was happening, South Asia and the whole subcontinent was fighting famine. In 1960, Pakistan and India were on the brink of war, but they couldn't afford it because more people were dying from starvation than anything. So scientists who had studied Borlaug's improvements in Mexico contacted him and asked him to come to their region and help them. His first attempt was a failure because the people were resistant to his methods. So in 1965, the famine became so great that the governments of both countries contacted Borlaug and insisted that he come and use his expertise to help the countries. By 1968, Pakistan was completely self-sufficient in wheat production, and by 1974, India was completely self-sufficient in all cereal productions. Since then, there has been an outpace of crops, but They were outpacing the population. His achievements in Mexico, India, and Pakistan were known around the world as the Green Revolution. Scientists that he trained spread his methods around the world and helped prosper. In 1970, him and his wife returned to Mexico, and he was working in the fields about an hour away from his home when his wife received the news that he had won the Nobel Peace Prize. So, being of Norwegian descent, which his descendants came to America to escape the shortage of food in their homeland, he returned to his ancestral homeland to receive his honor in providing millions of people with food. Shortly after, he created a World Food Prize for the people who helped him achieve the great things that he done and also help end world food problems. The World Food Prize has been used to help the world recognize the problems of famine all the way around the world. And as crop failure persists, the massive starvation predicted in the 60s by the scientists was avoided. So it's become apparent that he helped save over 1 billion people with the Green Revolution. His wife, Margaret Borlaug, of 69 years, died in 2007. In his 10th decade, he continued to contact the CIMMYT and teach with Texas A&M and help travel the world to spread his studies and methods around the world. And he spent his last few years in Dallas, Texas, where he died at the age of 95.